chairman for Tamale Central. Alhaji, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you very much for joining us on the line. I hope you're well.
Well, you sound good. I'm fine.
Alhaji, you sound very distant.
Well, I'm okay. Let me. I was talking through my earphones.
Oh, okay. We can't hear you clearly.
That one is everything.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's improved
So
significantly.
I was speaking through the earphones.
Okay. Great. On this development, of course, I'll come back to an issue that we're discussing earlier and take your views on it. But on this development of what has happened in the case of Ken Ofori-Atta, for many Ghanaians, they were hoping that this was going to be the channel, not to wish him bad, but was going to be the channel to which he will be sent back home to answer to any questions that the authorities in Ghana may have. But he seems to have been released from custody. They said he's with his family. Does this in any way mean, is this any signal of what is to happen, that perhaps he may get the stay he's looking for?
Right. I think that if Ghanaians are reading it that way, then they are misreading it. Basically, there were two actions, to the best of my knowledge, two actions that were proceeding against Ken Ofori-Atta in the United States. One is an immigration claim. He's going through an immigration process because he's overstayed his welcome in the United States. That was the reason why ICE arrested him. They arrested him because he was staying in the United States illegally. So it was not in pursuance of our request for him to be extradited to this country for trial, except that his detention coincided with our request for extradition. So they are two separate matters. And they proceed in two separate streams. Now, when an ICE proceeding is taken against a person, and the person is not a flight risk, and the determination of whether or not he should be deported is still ongoing, that person can be admitted to bail on conditions that will make his return to face the processes meaningful, or that will not compromise the proceedings ICE has initiated against him. So the admission of Ken Ofori-Atta to bail is just to let him continue to be with his family, but respond to the processes initiated against him by the immigration and customs enforcement authorities. That's a different matter. And anybody arrested under such circumstances can be admitted to bail if he puts bail conditions reasonable enough to guarantee his attendance to court to face those processes. So I don't say that. It's just a normal elongation of the case, or a normal consequence of the case. So I don't see anything wrong with that.
It's part of the process.
It's part of the process.
Bail being granted does not mean an indication of the fact that you may be found not guilty.
Bail being granted does not mean that he cannot be extradited to this country. There are two separate proceedings. So bail being granted him does not mean that he's free from the extradition processes.
I see. But the interesting part about it for many people is that the lawyers do not even mention Ghana's request. That so far that has not even occupied the attention of Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. That he could take advantage of this and ask to be sent home by himself. Is that an option that's available to him, that he could go to the authorities and say?
So that's a very, 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 very important observation you have made, and that is why we should be putting this in the public domain for people to understand and not celebrate what has happened, or his friends to celebrate what has happened. Now, he's granted bail. From the records that have come to my attention, on the basis of the fact that the court had been informed by the U.S. attorney that Ken Ofori-Atta is undergoing extradition processes or extradition proceedings. Now, the court that was seized with the matter of the ISIS detention did not have any information available to him to determine whether or not indeed extradition proceedings had been initiated against Ken Ofori-Atta. My understanding is that the judge, in order to exercise his discretion to admit Ken Ofori-Atta to bail, requested for the processes to be made available to the court to assist the court in arriving at a decision on whether or not to admit Ken Ofori-Atta to bail. My understanding is that those extradition processes were not made available to the judge. And so the judge, assessing the circumstances of Ken Ofori-Atta, the facts of the case of the ISIS detention, came to the conclusion that he could be admitted to bail while making himself periodically available to the court for the immigration matter to be dealt with. And so he was admitted to bail under conditions that will make it possible for him to come to court and not escape from the jurisdiction of the court.
So the matter of our request for extradition has not gone before that judge?
No, it's not before that judge.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not before that judge. That's why I say that it is important for commentators to understand what has happened. These are two separate matters. Two separate, distinct matters. Ken Ofori-Atta entered the United States on his own volition based on the permit given him in a visa. And he was, mandated or obligated to stay in the United States, or he had the right to stay in the United States on the visa for a certain number of days. He stayed beyond those days. So that is an infraction of immigration rules. And that is what he has been admitted to bail on. The extradition processes or proceedings are before another court. It's handled by the U.S. attorney. And this is a different matter.
So is it facing both at the same time?
It's facing both at the same time. Because they are unrelated. They are unrelated. But they are coming at the same time.
Okay, because there were many people who had started losing hope and raising questions already.
No. That is why I say we need an understanding of what has happened, not a celebration or despondency. No, you need to understand that this legal process that has culminated into the grant of bail to Ken Ofori-Atta is a process arriving or originating from an immigration infraction and not an extradition request.
I see. That's interesting clarity for many people. But the question I ask again, is it a question that we should continue? Because it's a question that keeps coming up, that someone who served this country will rather defend himself and try to seek stay in the U.S. for as long as it takes, however rigorous the process is, whatever he's taken through, he prefers to be there than come to this country and say, okay, I'm here, I was a public servant of this country, I'm here to answer any questions you have. Because he could have sought, as the U.S. authority, to deport him voluntarily.
You don't even need the U.S. authority to deport you. He didn't need to stay in the United States for his visa to expire. He didn't need to put in a request to change his immigration status in the United States. Because you see, Ken Ofori-Atta was given the privilege, the unique privilege, out of a population of 35 million people, to serve this country in the capacity of a minister for finance. Indeed, when members of his own party decided that his administration and management of the economy would lead to a catastrophic loss for the party, the president initially resisted any attempt to reshuffle him out of the Ministry of Finance. And finally, when the president came around to reshuffle him, he sent him to the presidency and gave him another responsibility. That is privilege. And to whom much is given, much is expected. I don't think that Ken Ofori-Atta is doing himself any good at all by continuously embarrassing himself and painting the picture that he's being hounded in the Republic of Ghana. Mind you, I also say that there is some element of unethical behavior in Ken Ofori-Atta's case. This is a man who, before the reins of government was transferred to the present government under John Dramani Mahama, had written to the chief of staff then to request for permission to travel out of the country to attend to his health. He put pen to paper requesting for that permission on medical grounds. He indicated when he wanted to leave and the day of his return in that letter. The basis upon the grant of the request to leave was the letter he had written. So Ken Ofori-Atta himself has violated the terms under which he sought permission to leave this country by his conduct. And so that element of ethical behavior, the lack of ethical consideration, is also very worrying. It's very worrying for public officers who have occupied one of the highest elections of public service or public office to behave in this manner. What is it that Ken Ofori-Atta will be subjected to that will be less embarrassing or more embarrassing than the embarrassment he's going through? This is a man who is fighting to stay in the United States because he doesn't want to face accountability. He just simply doesn't want to account. It's impunity. Yes, impunity. And it's not nauseating. It's impunity of the highest order.
I see. Alhaji, but there are also those who hold the opinion that if you have a strong case against him, you do not need him here.
No. I always hear people say that rule of law says that there must be a substantive law that says that you don't need him. And there must be procedural law that shows you how to go about dispensing of his presence in court. It is not by the personal idiosyncrasies of anybody. The law says that an accused person, a person accused of a crime, is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of competent jurisdiction. That's the first fundamental admission of law, that you can't treat an accused person as a criminal. So the right of an accused person to be presumed innocent is a constitutional right. That is why when you are sending him to court, you are not sending him to court as a criminal. You are sending him to court as a suspect, as an accused person. And it is you can only call him a criminal when the court convicts. So on what basis can you come to the conclusion that a person who has been suspected of a crime ought not to be in court? Or you've not seen people accused of crimes being acquitted of those offenses? So no, it's not the case that he will not be treated fairly. No.
Those who make that argument
It's
also
not the
refer
case that he should be wherever he is so that we can continue to try him. The case is that an accused person must appear before the court. Look at the International Criminal Court. They go at length to arrest even heads of states and international actors in crimes against humanity to appear before the court in The Hague to stand trial. So if that were the preferred option, you could simply be where you are and they'll try you. But you are being called to come to answer to those questions. It is only under some circumstances. One, you have been invited, you have been served with the criminal summons, you have been given a court date, you have been asked to come to court, you decided that you won't come to court, and you are beyond the reach of the arresting authorities to arrest you and bring you to court. That's one condition. Two, you have come to court, but your conduct in court is so unruly that your presence in court will not aid the expeditious disposition of the matter. So you by your conduct, but in both cases is your conduct, but in the second case, the rowdy conduct makes it excusable. Your presence excusable by the court.
I see. So the proposal of trial in absentia, you think is untenable?
I think it's untenable. I think that those who argue that way are ignoring the fact that it will set a very dangerous precedent for holding political office holders accountable.
Well, before I let you go, this morning we've been discussing this matter of vehicles that are imported into this country. The Toyota Voxy imported into this country, coming as right-hand drive, I converted into left-hand drive to fit our purpose. In some cases, it is said their wheels are changed so that they give them a higher clearance. And there have been complaints about the fact that they are leading to accidents, among others. The move by the National Road Safety Commission is a consideration of a committee report. The committee is proposing that they be banned from doing long-distance travel. And also, there should be a ban on further importation of those vehicles into this country. And we have a second look at our whole law on the right-hand drive, importation of right-hand drive vehicles. What do you think?
First of all, I think that I need to commend the Amalbert National Road Safety Commission.
Authority now
for their decision. You see, Wayo, the former NDC chairman, Dr. Aji Konaji, had said some time ago that you can fund the budget of this country by simply charging indiscipline. And no nation develops by its citizens being indisciplined. Discipline requires that we do things in accordance with law and reason. That's what the discipline requires. Now, those vehicles were not built for commercial activities. They were not built for certain types of roads. They were not built for certain distances. The manufacturer or original equipment manufacturer builds them for a specific purpose under specific conditions. Then you bring them into the country and convert those vehicles into long distance vehicles, mass occupancy vehicles, commercial vehicles. Change the specifications. When you had no hand in the engineering of the vehicle, that's indiscipline. That's simply indiscipline. Cannot be wisdom. It's indiscipline. And any attempt to stop indiscipline should be commended. And I commend the National Road Safety Authority for taking that decision. I myself have seen those vehicles flying Tamale Bolga, Tamale Techima, Tamale Kumasi. And any time I see those vehicles, I cringe. They're light vehicles. They're very light vehicles. And so when they are engaged in an accident, the metals, it's just like a matchbox. They crumble. And the rate of survival in accident is very low because they are not built with heavy standstill metal. So why will we expose ourselves to these levels of danger? So that is why the state is taking the lead in protecting citizens and the lives of the citizens. And I think that it's a decision in the right direction.
Well, commendable as it may be, should we also not point out the culpability of the state in failing to ensure that it doesn't get to thousands of this being imported into this country before action is taken?
Yes, so that's why I talk about indiscipline. And this indiscipline arises when officials of states are complicit in acts of illegality or wrongdoing. That's where the indiscipline starts. If everybody does his work as expected, and there are only a few recalcitrant members, they are easy to fish out. But when a wrong becomes the norm, then it becomes a problem. So you can ask from the ports. So who allowed the vehicles to enter the country in the first place? Who allowed the vehicles? Who assessed the tax or customs duties on those vehicles? Go to the DVLA. Who licensed those vehicles? Under what conditions were they licensed? Go to the Kukupe or Abusokai. Who are those converting those vehicles and changing the engineering of those vehicles? Who are they? Are they not complicit? Are they not co-conspirators? You go to the police. When they see those vehicles flying the road, what do they say? What do they say? So yes, you might say because agents of the state have been involved in perpetuating this wrong, the state itself is complicit. But I say that everything right, done rightly, starts from right people doing the right things.
Alhaji, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alhaji Inusah Fuseini is member of Parliament for Tamale Central. Join us on the line, taking us to 33 minutes past 9 here in the studios of Radio Gold 90.5 FM. We take a quick break. When we come back, we'll speak to an immigration lawyer on this development, and then we'll conclude with the electricity company of Ghana. They are doing some changes when it comes to many transformers across this country. We'll speak to them about that shortly.